your duty to welcome them, to be uber welcoming to them.
So there's not a fear.
Facing off with Eastern Bloc, practicing various forms of statism, socialism, communism, various forms of statism, and these two are fighting for influence. So, and we're also it's also not, so two things there. One is we're at a time where, remember, the free market concept was almost dead. Almost dead. So almost every intellectual at that time was social Marxist. Or Marxist socialist, I put the name. That's what you were. So you're in a world where it was the normal thing, it was just mainstream acceptance. So not only you have that force, but at the same time, if these two forces are fighting one another, it turns out that the one representing capitalism and freedom, well, sorry, but isn't it you who enslaved us and colonized us? And you're fighting with the people who represent, you know, supposedly people who are saying that who had been fighting for equal rights for us with us for the longest time. These are our friends, and that's when we made a fatal mistake. Because while yes, there were maybe good things to agree on with Marxist socialists of the times, especially equal rights for all people and all of that. That's the only thing we should have among the only things we should have agreed upon. Their violent revolution tendencies, no way. When it comes to their economic nonsense, no way. We should not have thrown the baby out with the bathwater, but that's what we did, and that's when we made a fatal mistake. So then we became free, all of these nations, and most of them started with socialist or communist leaders. My country, socialist. Leopold Sédar Senghor, he was a socialist. And they stayed in power for 40 years. The first 40 years of our freedom years. And all over the continent, more or less, that's what you had. And on top of that, something else that the French don't know, the people don't know, is France, with its colonies, said you cannot not do. You have to keep the French civil law. So we're talking about the Napoleonic civil code. Are you kidding me? So that's what happened. So the reason why I go back to BLM is while I have all the respect in the world and all the compassion in the world for people like Nkrumah, for people like Nyerere, for people, all of those people of those times, the liberators of Africa, while I have so much love, compassion for them, I am also able to say, because I got the benefit of 60-some years time, and where you get to do a debrief and see what worked, what didn't work, what happened. We have had those 60 years to look back and to reflect. So yes, I can understand why they did what they did. I can understand why they sided with these people who, on the surface, or at least some part of the fight, was the same fight as them when it came to equal rights. I can excuse them, but I will not excuse the BLM founders, because that mistake was tolerable 60-some years ago. Today, no. The blacks of today cannot be serious about Black Lives Mattering and saying in the same sentence, and we're going to be socialist, Marxist socialist. It just doesn't work.
So the BLM movement is too deeply integrated with ideas
ideologies.
Marxism.
Yeah. They're anti-free market, anti-capitalist, and we do know that you have to have the free markets in order to build prosperity. And prosperity means economic power. If you have economic power, no one messes with you. Or if they're gonna do it, they're gonna have to think twice. And when they do, they're gonna have to pay consequences. So if you want for blacks to be respected anywhere in the world, you're gonna have to be serious about black prosperity. En masse. Not just a few people, Oprah over here and somebody over there. No. We as a group have to be critical mass of prosperity across the board. And because we're talking critical mass of prosperity across the board, it means black people everywhere in the world. But guess what? We in Africa happen to represent 90% of the representatives of the black race. So you're gonna be serious about Black Lives Mattering without being serious for Africa, the 1 billion people in Africa that are black, and for them to have access to the free markets and yes, fossil fuels, so that they can rocket, up prosperity-wise.
And the resources of the young people, the young
Yes,
minds.
so that all of these young people, young minds can finally manifest their greatness that I know they have, and that they're showing us every day despite the obstacles. That's what we need. Senegal becomes rich, and Senegal can become and will be richer than France, the colonizer. Singapore did it, we can do it. Mali rich, Nigeria rich, functioning as well. Malawi rich, Tanzania rich, Uganda rich, Zimbabwe rich, Niger rich, everywhere rich, prosperous. As prosperous, if not more prosperous than Switzerland or Singapore or the US, I don't know, or the Liechtenstein or Luxembourg, places that have no, natural resources. We become rich, and you watch the world having a very different relationship with us. That's the only time we will command any type of respect. That's when people, even our common psyche will change even about black people. All of the stereotypes that they have of us is gonna melt away. And you may still not like us, but you will still respect us because we are a force to be dealt with. And only economic power does that. It would be nice, of course, for us to respect people because they're people. It would be nice, but let us not kid ourselves. This is Earth. And someone said, nice people will make it to heaven, but not to Harvard necessarily. It's true.
It's interesting that pity does not ever turn into respect. It would be nice if it did.
It would be nice, but it doesn't.
Prosperity is the
Prosperity
only thing.
is the only thing. And the way we do that, there is no, just like all of us humans have to inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. That's a human way of breathing. You bring me but you want to be foolish and be like, oh, well, sorry, that's how white people breathe. So as black people, we're going to have to do something different. Well, good luck with that. Right?
Yeah.
So this is here why I'm saying I have no patience for Black Lives Matter. They're making a mistake that was made 60 some plus years ago. Even more than that, maybe even 100 years. When we were fighting with the Marxist socialists because they're the ones who've been fighting for equal rights.
Let me ask you, though, about racism. Do you, as you travel through this world, as you travel through America, feel the burn of hatred? You've spoken about the revolutions that have been fought throughout the 20th century against racism. But today, as people talk about educating, reminding the world with even with more philosophical ideas of critical race theory, for example, do you think this is still a battle that needs to be fought at the forefront of culture in the United States?
Does racism exist? Yes, it does. But all forms of isms exist. Some people, it's about various forms of ableism. Others, it's about size. And racism, yes, is one of them. Does it exist? Yes, it does. But is it what's going to stop anyone from manifesting their greatest potential? I say no. I say no. Many people in this country have showed it. Whether they're African Americans or African immigrant, I'm an African immigrant. You have African Americans like Oprah and others, and other people even before her, who, despite the nastiness around them, were able to make it. So we do know, especially as black people, but I think it's humanity as a whole. And that's what I love about the human spirit. It's resiliency. But resiliency only can happen if you don't allow yourself to be beaten down and to lose your self of agency. It's of course, easier said than done. And some among us need a little bit more help to not succumb for it than others do. And I've seen it. It might be harder for you if you're somewhere in, inner city, inner city Black America. Maybe the environment might be a little bit tougher for you to try and get your act together and all of that stuff. And it's okay. But even in that situation, we need to, I think it's important that we still do not rob you of your agency. And this is where I am mad as heck against those who supposedly care, and their idea of how to make sure that I don't become or stay a victim of racism is through all the things we talked about, the CRT, the anti-racism crap of, Abraham X. Kendi, and what's her name? Robin DiAngelo. I mean, I'm shocked. The woman is making all of this money, supposedly fighting a war on our behalf. I'm like, lady, I hear you loud and clear that you are a true racist. I know, but you told me you are. And for you to think that your anti-racism makes you less racist, and that happens too. She comes from a racist background. Fine, she's saying it. It's true. But this idea that every walking person on Earth belongs to one category or the other, depending on what which skin color you came with, it's problematic at its root. So my point is, does racism exist? Yes. Do you think it's going to stop me from doing anything I have to do? No. Might it make it harder, longer? Maybe. But it will not stop me. But for it not to stop me, I can't engage in victimhood mentality. I can't lose my self-esteem. I got to use all the agency that I have to fight back and fight beyond. See? It's just just a fight back. You fight back and you fight beyond. Because at some point, yeah, and. It's this concept of yes, and. So, this is why I have loved the job. So when I have somebody who is like, oh, anti-racism is the way, we're gonna go and tell all the white kids that, because they happen to be white, that they're really the oppressors and blah, blah, blah. And the black kids, because they're black, you're not changing anything when you're doing that. Nothing except that you're putting problems where there were no problems to start with. All we had to do was maybe go for a different route from there. Kids are kids. Kids are born kids. And this, I'm not sure if you want to get me going on to the whole science of bias, because that's something I spent years of my life on. And my journey on the science of bias started with the days of Philando Castile, Eric Garner, that whole summer of 2016, when we had this horrendous situation of black people being killed by the police, where they shot before asking, and people left to die in the most inhumane way for the rest of us to watch from the social media. That's me. That's when my George Floyd moment happened. Not later, 4 years ago, and the whole world is like, So that set me on a journey of understanding what discrimination is and bias is. And in a way, that's the reason why I started this company that I even called Skin is Skin. That's where it came from. Again, criticized by creating. I needed to understand what discrimination was. How does it work? Is it true what Kendi is saying? Is it true what D'Angelo is saying? Is it true that it could be that you're racist just because of the skin color you happen to be born in? Is it true? Is it true? I needed to know, because I was at a time of my life where, at some point, when those killings were happening, it was so hard for me, being a black person in this country, and wondering, I mean, what is this, and what do we do with this?
Yeah, is it true? How much discrimination am I operating under in the system?
All of that, and
You need to understand the full characteristics of, if you're dreaming of making a big change by building companies, you have to kind of intuit what am I up against?
What am I up against, right? And so this is why, spend all of this time on some of the work, and then eventually I understood that discrimination, if you wanted to understand it beyond It's beyond the big lines of especially the clickbait lines would make it very black and white. That I had to really take a moment and I spent time, with the world of brain scientists, with behavioral psychologists, with evolutionary biologists. So you have all of this ecosystem, but together form what one might call the science of bias. And especially, I came across the work of this team of scientists at the University of, I think it's Wisconsin, and they're the only ones who made sense in this sea of nonsense back then. And this article wasn't political, and it was saying something that I could relate with. And eventually, what I learned was, and this part comes from the evolutionary biologist people, they, in a way, tell you that right around age 3, can happen sooner or later because, we're all different. But you go from this person who has to rely on these other people, usually your parents, to stay alive, to be fed, to be housed, to be even your diaper change, all of that stuff, right? To now, something is kicking in where you have to, in order for you to survive, and this is all wired in, so you don't even understand it consciously as I'm saying it now, where in order for you to survive, in order for you to go from this state of dependency to another, to the next state, to the next stage, and more and more and more, you're going to have to develop this ability to make sense of the world. And what's making sense of the world at its most basic level means is, can you determine if a situation or a person is good or bad for you? Failure, and you need to be able to do so ever so quickly. Because failure to be able to do that means that you might not be alive the next second. See, it's so wired in. So this process is starting to kick in. And at that point, your brain is going to be your best ally for that. And what the brain is going to do is it's going to help you. And the way the brain works is through it works with it's all wired for efficiency. And the way it goes for efficiency is through automation. Meaning that every time it has computed, and you probably know these things way better than me, every time it has computed one algorithm, it doesn't want to do it again. It's almost like this, okay, got it, stored, right? And then it adds maybe some little levels of complexity to it, but it has to be something new, meaning the new level of complexity, for it to even be willing to reconsider. Otherwise, so then all of a sudden what you have is these neurons in the back of your head, and they have created pathways, right? So, and every time neurons have created pathway among themselves, because basically they're attached. And here's the pathway. Well, this pathway in the world of bias, science of bias, it's a habit. In general, it's a habit when they form two pathways. When they form a pathway, it's a habit. So, if we're willing to talk about unconscious bias, because of course, it's very different from somebody who tells me to my face, there's no world in which you or I could ever be equal because you're black and I'm white, you're a woman, I'm a man, this, and that. That, people like that, again, 1% of psychopaths in our world, they're out there. Unfortunately, by the time they do nasty things, it's pretty horrible, and that's what all we hear about. But I'm talking mostly about the rest of us. Remember when I told you that most of us are good people, bumbling along, making it up as we're going. And that's why I have compassion for human nature. So, but really, in the morning when I wake up, do you really think that I'm waking up and thinking, how am I gonna go kill? How am I gonna go kill Lex? That guy needs to go down. He's a man. Don't take me wrong. I'm sure there's some women who feel like that, but I'm not one of them, and I do think a majority of us are not, whatever. But in the morning I'm waking up, I'm just like, gee, can I get my tea? Oh, my dog is not looking okay today. We've got, right?
There's a lot going on as you're using these kind of, just like you said brilliantly, the brain has a bunch of simplifications that's built up.
Yeah.
And it uses those simplifications to get through the day.
To get through the day. Exactly. So then here you are needing to make sense of a world. And then the brain is your best ally in that. The way it's going to do it is for efficiency. Efficiency done through automation. So every time it thinks it's figured something out, it's never going to think about it again. So that's how you build all of these habits of unconscious bias. Because everything, so it's somewhere along the line, you come up with with the information that black man walking around with a hoodie equals danger. So later, what do you see? Whether it's like, oh my God, I'm walking in the dark alley, I see a black man with a hoodie, maybe I'm gonna run away because I've been given that information. So the best way to think about it is the brain is a hardware, and the software it runs on is what do you call it? Is a cultural imprint. All of this information that we're getting from the Disney movies that you're reading, telling you that damsels are to be saved by the prince and all that stuff, and girls wear pink and all whatever. Um, you watch the movies, and all the movies, whenever you watch them, it's about Africa. They're talking to you about the blood diamonds, or they're talking to you about slavery, or they're talking to you about this, and then no wonder you walk away thinking that all the ills of Africa are caused because of resource extraction, the diamonds, or they're always fighting each other. Look at Idi Amin and the movie, or slavery all the time. You walk away, and this is it. And we all programmed along the same line. See, that's the beauty of it. All of us are. Because even some black people who are going to claim but they didn't, this is not what they registered. Really? So the truth, so then when I learned all of this, I'm like, wow, this concept of if you've got the brain, you've got biases, it comes with the territory, that makes sense. Now, it doesn't mean we can't transcend that function of a brain and that we should transcend it. Right? But I think it's very important because once you understand that, a little bit more peace is created among us. Because this is not about a black and white or a yellow or green issue. It's about we are human issue, and these are part of the things we develop to, to keep to stay around. Just like we no longer have to rely on, this fear of flight, ability of the brain, because bears over there start running and running fast, right? Today, where are the bears? Show me where they are. But we have kept this tendency to go for fear of flight. I don't know how they say it. And so we have this, cortisone done by the stress, stress triggers that back in the days we have a stress trigger, we run, and it's all, expelled out. But today we get triggers and we don't know what to do with it because where do we run to? What do we do? The bear is not even here. So same thing here with that. And so then you realize there's this whole thing that is now what you understand is that this problem is not about anti-racism BS, but it is about can each one of us do the work where the work is needed, which is we look inside. Can we go for this work of deprogrammation? This concept of a mindful practice of undoing the habit of bias.
And that doesn't necessarily have to do with a simple categorization of black and white. It's all kinds of biases.
It's about everything. It's about everything. And when I started on that journey, and me and my friend back then built, this practice of undoing your habit of unconscious bias, we had all types of people come and say, wow, I discovered that my bias is against larger people. And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, I think it seems to me like I felt that larger people maybe are dumb. No, we heard things. And and you don't judge.
Yeah.
You don't judge. And so, and you see, it's at every level. I don't know, there's even this one friend, she was like, when I looked into the whole dating thing, I absolutely didn't want to have, date the Asian men because her mind was into some stereotypes about the size of whatever. And she was like, no. But you see, once you start, because there's this whole thing of, it's the 5-step thing, bias awareness. This, basically, at this level, what you're doing is you're learning to spot the biases in our culture, because that's where the cultural imprint comes from. You're watching this movie and you're realizing, just like I said, wow, gee, I realized once again the black person is portrayed like the thug of a movie, or the Latina lady. This is how she's been portrayed. Literally, he found Plato, the cave, and all of that. So today, these people, I'm like, why don't we hear more about them, the urban specialists? Because these people, it's not about the anti-racism crap of Candy or D'Angelo, I'll say it again, until the cows come home, but it is about we go where help is needed. We go in in urban, inner city, black inner city neighborhoods, and block by block we change the culture. And they say it like that. It's their words. These are African American people who have as many rights as anybody else to talk about their own culture. And they will tell you, we have to change the culture. I have some videos like that on my YouTube with Bishop Omar. What these people are doing is what we need to do. Bishop will explain in his size. Sometimes people are, their feet and feet deep down in the mud. And what we have to do is to try to pull them up. And you cannot say you didn't pull them up because we're not seeing their head out yet. But how much progress have they made from the bottom to where they are now? And keep going. So what I see these people doing, you see, I have so much. I love and respect Glenn Lowry and company, and Ian Rove and all those guys. I love them. I love a lot of the things that they say. Um, this whole concept of personal responsibility and all that. But I'm just like, at some point, it also needs to be matched up with real actions. Yeah. And that's what the people like Anton Lucky, urban specialist, Alice Johnson are doing. They're going where it's hard. Alice Johnson is getting people out of jail every single day, literally. And then people like Anton Lucky and his team are giving them the tools to leave the gang life, to be better people, to go for a life of redemption. This is happening right now. But what I find is they're not getting the bulk of the attention. Yeah. But this is anybody who's serious about this is how I would love to see people do anti-racism is help lift people up for real.
Action.
Support school choice. Support school choice. Black mamas they know what's going on. And when they tell you we want school choice, they know what they're talking about. They're not idiots.
Especially at the local level.
Yes.
Helping out at the local level.
Yes. So help them make sure that they can take their kids out of